If you watched my swan cygnets video from a couple of years ago, you'll know that I love watching the changes in growth and behaviour as young animals grow up. Well, this summer I followed a couple of barn swallow nests to document their offspring. Unlike with the swan video, these nests were in Northern Ireland, so I had to apply for a licence to be able to film this one. Because of the wait, I couldn't record the earliest created nest that I saw before the chicks had hatched, but this nest that you're seeing was built later in the season. I was able to film the parents here taking turns incubating their eggs. It takes roughly 2 weeks for barn swallow chicks to hatch out, so I wasn't surprised when 14 days later I spotted the parents up and fussing with the nest. They were possibly caring for their newly hatched young. Again, they share duties here, with one parent coming back and signalling for the other parent that's already on the nest to leave. They swap their positions so that the vulnerable new chicks are always protected. I was able to start filming this other nest once the chicks turned to about 12 days old. You can see how well they blend in with the mud and straw nest that their parents built. At this age, their parents can leave them for short periods of time while they forage. Look as the chicks open their beaks, flashing a yellow gape. This, along with their calls, signals to the parents that they need to be fed. With a nest full of siblings, you've got to make yourself the biggest target for insects being delivered if you want to be able to grow up big and strong. Within a minute or two of calling from the nest, one of the parents was consistently swooping in and dropping off some tasty food. Each time the parents returned, they chose a different mouth. Unlike the chicks, who want all of the food to themselves, the parents will maximise their chances of successfully passing on their genetics if they spread the food across each of the chicks. Of course, the parents also need to feed themselves. Barn swallow adults eat insects while they are flying rather than after they land. Despite population declines, they aren't considered to be of conservation concern in the UK. But barn swallows could be one of our species that suffers from the knock-on effects of our current concerns. Agricultural intensification and the dramatic decline of our insects means that barn swallows are finding it harder to forage. Although they are currently surviving, the reduced ability to find food is likely to impact them in the coming years. Let's check in on the other nest. As we pass through 13, 14 and 15 days old, the chicks develop quite quickly. At the same age, both sets of chicks have developed fluffier faces as their bodies continue to grow. By 16 days old, there isn't too much activity going on. Perhaps these chicks are resting in preparation for the fledging stage. But by 20 days old, their more adult coloration has developed, and they had the strength to practice their fledging. In between food deliveries, you can see these chicks balancing on the edge of the nest, looking out curiously and testing the movements of their feathers in the wings and the tails. You can also see the chicks defecating over the edge of the nest. When they're younger, the parents help clean the nest by picking up the droppings and physically removing them. This helps avoid the buildup of muck and the spread of disease. However, by this age, the responsibility is on the young themselves to defecate outside, which yes, does make for a very messy floor beneath them. At approximately 21 days old, the barn swallows are fledged. If you find this process as fascinating as I do, remember to give this video a like so that I'll know to make more like this in the future. Watch as some of the fledglings circle around, making little practice flights, while others are resting in the nest still. At this age, they're clumsy and uncoordinated, but learning under their parents' watchful eyes. When you film wildlife, it's important that you pay attention to make sure you're not disturbing them. These swallows live in a barn and it's used daily, so they're used to people being in close proximity. But swallows are notoriously territorial around their young. When one of the parents decided it had had enough of my presence, it dive-bombed me, so I took that as a cue to stop filming and move away. At 22 days old, the other nest had also fledged. You can tell straight away that these are fledglings because of their appearance. Not only are they smaller than the adults, but they don't have the longer forked tails that their parents do, and their throats aren't as deep red. You can really see this when the parents return and sit near them, ever watchful during this clumsy stage where the emerged fledglings are less likely to be able to evade predators. At this stage, the fledglings are mobile, but they can't feed themselves very well. Their practice flights are followed by long periods of rest, where they preen their feathers and continue to beg for food. It isn't long before the swallows can spend most of their time outside. This barn is the perfect nesting spot for them because it gives them shelter from the elements, is nearby nesting materials, and borders farmland where all the best foraging is. Unfortunately, a lot of nesting habitats have been lost to barn swallows recently. Their historic breeding locations are in barns and the eaves of houses, and these are increasingly becoming modernised. Oftentimes in this process, it gets rid of all the nesting crevices. After they were rested and fed, the whole family headed outside. It was really nice to watch the chicks growing braver and learning to swoop for insects like their parents. Their flights were much shorter, and they used the nearby tree canopy to rest up every now and then, but they were definitely making progress. By the time the barn swallows were around 25 days old, the nest had been basically abandoned, bar from returning to it at night. So long as we humans don't interfere with it, different barn swallow pairs will be able to reuse a good nest for more than 10 years, so this site will likely be made use of even after this family has left. A week later, and the barn swallows would show much more prolonged flight. Until the 1800s, we thought swallows hibernated because we weren't seeing them here over the winter, but we now know that they actually fly all the way to South Africa and back over those winter months. At the time of this video being published, at the start of October, these newly flying chicks will have turned a few months old and will be about to make that same 8,000-mile trip. If you'd like to support me in creating videos like this, remember to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment if there's anything about wildlife in the UK that you'd like to see a video on. I'm already looking forward to welcoming our barn swallows back next summer.